A very good afternoon to everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the webinar on Qualitative Content Analysis hosted by UnPickle Analytical Solutions. This webinar aims to demonstrate how Qual researchers are able to free up 100% of manual analysis time, slice and dice qualitative data like a pivot, and share top-line findings on the same day or the next day. So, for the smooth flow of the webinar, we have a few guidelines I would like to mention. I would request the participants to avoid crosstalks during the presentation. The structure of the meeting is 45 minutes of presentation and 15 minutes of the question and answer session. I would request all the participants to note down their questions and send it across to me via personal chat. I would then present the questions to the speaker during the question and answer session. Moving on, our guest speaker for today is Milind Kelkar. Milind is the Chief Analytics Officer at UnPickle and is a veteran of research and analytics domain. He holds a doctorate degree in marketing sciences from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, as well as a metallurgical engineering degree from VNIT, Nagpur. In his last corporate role, before turning an entrepreneur 7 years ago, Milind was heading products and solutions at Genpact, a global leader in business process management. Previously, he had held leadership roles in analytics consulting companies like Kantar and Marketex, and also at a large bank as HSBC. At UnPickle, Milind specializes in text analytics for open-ended questions in customer surveys and online reviews. Last 7 years, UnPickle has continuously improved the quality of insights with AI-generated themes and provided 99% plus confidence level in analytical output with their in-house proprietary platform, InfoPickle. Milind is currently partnering with other industry players to empower business analysts with code-free data science platform. Please help me welcome our speaker for today, Milind Kelkar.
Hey, thanks, Monish. Monish, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. So, welcome everyone. We have been in the industry for the last 7 years, focusing on qualitative data analysis, and today's session focus is primarily on focus group interview word transcript. There are many challenges in analyzing focus group interview word transcripts. One is the volume of data is very high dimensional, which means that for even 6 or 10 transcripts, you may have 100, 250,000 analysis questions to ask of the data. The data is extremely rich, but also very confusing, right? So did the technician resolve or not resolve? Was the call center helpful, not helpful? Was the call center helpful, but the branch was not helpful, and vice versa? So the researcher needs to really glean through every sentence to understand the nuances. Sometimes respondents talk in confusing sentences, saying, for example, whether a service by leading bank was resolved or not resolved. So these data is so huge that most of the researchers are always stretched for time to analyze the data. Currently, we found that there are 3 ways in which focus group interview word transcripts are analyzed. One is the tried and tested printouts, read every transcripts, create collages, post-its. Second is we have found there's something called content moderation, where moderators listen to the audio conversation and directly write the report. There's a slightly modified version, which is about moderator notes. So different researchers attend different interviews and focus groups. They take notes and then they compile for eventual analysis. The third is the manual copy paste. So you do the audio to word transcription and then try to copy paste the data into an Excel file or into a Word file for your analysis purposes. when we looked at the analysis, when we started 7 years back, we looked at trying to saying, how do we solve for this problem? So we looked up to at our core platform, UnPickle, which is written in Python by me and my partner. And this platform has connects with the SQL database and takes the bulk of the heavy lifting that a qualitative data analysis requires. So this tool currently can analyze focus group into word transcripts. We have analyzed data for quality monitoring in a call center, customer complaints, feedback surveys, social media comments, documents, reviews, multiple sources of data. But as I said, today's focus is primarily on analysis of focus group into word transcript. The platform, we realized when we're looking at this structure, the researchers were expecting a very high level of accuracy and reliability. So we do have data analyst who ensures that the tool is calibrates well enough for every different project, every different kind of nuance that is fed into the tool. Two, it's a code-free platform, is very fungible, very flexible. As we worked over the 7 years, the tool has evolved, especially for focus group interview word transcript, to understand and take into account different requirements that different teams, different researchers, different verticals have. But I think the main point is the benefits. This whole service ensures that there's most of the 100% of the manual analysis time is freed up. The researchers are able to slice and dice text data like a pivot. If not the same day or next day, analysis is done. So there's no waiting for analysis to happen. And as I said earlier, it's high dimensional data, which means be it 6 transcripts, be it 300 word transcripts, be it any combination of transcripts, the tool does the big of the heavy lifting. This tool has received, good adoption in the industry. Some of the US researchers have used it to eliminate the manual task. Some of them are using for structuring and pattern spotting, which helps them to understand the qualitative data better. Companies like ITC have done it very differently. They have looked at aggregating not only one project, but across multiple projects. So we looked at aggregating 750 word transcripts, qualitative word transcripts, and creating a conversation database to see how brands and the attributes that are being tracked are spoken in connection to a consideration set, imagery, evolution over a period of time, how different markets are viewing the brands. So these are very different kind of work we have done. So what is the flow of analysis that we recommend while working with qualitative researchers, especially when it comes to focus group interview word transcripts? The flow is very simple. There are very bare minimum prerequisites that are required to adhere so that the tool can take it. There is a static analysis that we recommend to begin with, because it helps you to take from that unstructured to structured level. Data sorting is the first output that UnPickle provides. Cohort analysis is an adjunct, which is especially when you're looking at segment level differences, such as age, SEC, gender, usage, lifestyle. Some researchers also use our summary services. We auto summarize and reduce the data even further at level 5. So we're going to talk about 1 to 7 in the subsequent slides as we go through. So what is focus group interview word transcript analysis flow? What is the first requirement? The first requirement is a prerequisite. We request and recommend that the transcript should at least have a marker, which we call that each respondent gets marked as moderator and respondent. So M stands for moderator, R stands for respondent. Some researchers, especially we have seen in overseas market, where some clients have insisted to know who has spoken in some research studies. So we request them to keep a tab of who has spoken instead of the R column. Now, this second will ensure that until the transcriber looks at the video to know who is talking, right? Without the video, you will not know, very difficult to know who is talking. But this is also one way in which we analyze the data. The third way is where researchers have told us that they need not know whether it's Mike or Sashi or Shine or Caroline, but they need to know where does the conversation of one respondent stop versus the second respondent or third respondent. So it doesn't matter who, but as long as they know that the conversation pieces are separately. So this is only one slide prerequisites that researchers have to adhere to. Anybody in the audience who has any questions are welcome to write in the chat box, and Monish will definitely articulate that for the group. Yeah. So definitely, if you have any questions, please feel free to add in the chat box. The second requirement is of the analysis header, what we also call section headers. It's a static analysis. You want all the data that you have collected via discussion guide, irrespective of whether the discussion guide is static or dynamic or is changed over a period of time. At the end of the day, you want to analyze the data by these breaks, starting with what are the big shifts, relationship with parents, technology changes, socializing changes. So either the researcher or the UnPickle analyst will ensure that all the data falls into these buckets or sections. The reason we call static is because more or less they are standardized or normalized for a given project. Right? So they generally don't change unless the researcher has a broad plan. Generally, they don't change for a given project. In some cases, the structure may be even more complex. So instead of having a 22-dimension structure, you may have a 55-dimension or 55 analysis header, where you have multiple ads, you have brand one ads, you have repeat exposures. For each ad, you have different questions, right, starting from spawn, message, unique comprehension being tagged to it. So your analysis structure could be simple, it could be complex. We have seen, in fact, 1,000-section analysis structure where it was about 13 brands, 7 product categories, multiple sub questions being asked for each category, done across 50 units or word transcripts or cohorts. So that was a slightly complex one. So what the tool does is that it looks at this static analysis structure, and at level 3, it tries to analyze or structure all that pieces of information into these predefined buckets, which we call the third stage as data sorting. What is data sorting? Data sorting is to encourage the Qual researchers to read between the lines, to connect the dots, to deep dive into multiple conversations, and enhance consumer understanding. And this requires that the researcher has different kinds of outputs for the same data. So what we do provide is the different terms that we will articulate in subsequent slide, starting with first level analysis, 2-level analysis, and also how do you introduce context, or how do you take on challenges of multilingual nuance of the data. Yeah. So first, at first level, the data sorting output churns out is what we call first level analysis. So your mod question stands for moderator question. It exactly mimics the way the data was there in the original conversation. The only difference is it is analyzed or structured as per the predefined analysis header. This data is something that we call as mod question. The first level analysis is very similar to mod question. It's just that the moderator question has been removed, so that there is little manageability to what the data is. In the collapsed section or collapsed worksheet, each of the sentences are color coded by sentiment. This is to help the researchers come up with quick insights, or to quickly zone down to saying, hey, this is a big joint family. They eventually got bored, and it's about shopping is about wasting money. So these are some of the conclusions that the color coding helps. In some cases, we also encourage researchers to define their own set of keywords. Let's say clothes or apparel or brand names, let's say Myntra or Amazon, by which you can color code a transcript. Now, this color coding helps you to know where the transition happens when the conversation is taking place. Now, if you were to take an example of how it looks into a tool, okay, I'll quickly take to the UnPickle tool. So this is the UnPickle tool. As you can see in the UnPickle tool, there are very simple sections that are available in the UnPickle tool. As you go from pre-analysis, manual analysis stage, and content stage. For generally 5 files, you just need to define the transcripts. You just need to define the analysis header file, and the outputs that the tool gives is what we call as data sorting. Now, we always recommend that every researcher, when he looks at the output, especially for the first time, while working with UnPickle outputs, is that it's too overwhelming. And there are multiple worksheets. So the first decision you take is which worksheet you would like to work with. So let's assume you want to work with the mod question. The second best practice we recommend is that you should view and freeze the pane. Okay. The reason is to freeze the pane is it helps you to navigate the data both in terms of rows or in terms of columns. As even if you have data, you can still look at the dimension of units, activities, codes, as well as the analysis structure that you have. The second decision is we recommend the researchers to use an auto filter function. So if you go to data, if you go to filter, and if you select your row 2, right, not row 3, not row 1, row 2, if you filter it, it helps you to sort or select or navigate through those multiple analysis data very quickly. So we recommend that you use column A to quickly navigate through saying, I want to go to concept and see what are the different questions that are asked in a concept, or what is the future, what are the different types of questions in future. So column A is used for autofilter. Column B is used for scrolling down. Instead of, if you're not comfortable with the filter option, you can scroll down and you can go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buckets and look at the data where it is. Now, what happens in a mod question is that the data is pretty long. You will see that it starts from row 1 and goes up till, if you look at it, the questions go up till 264 rows of data. So in first level analysis, we are reducing the data complexity by removing the mod question or the moderator question. This helps you to look at a lesser volume of data than you had in the mod questions. The mod question, there were both moderator and respondent. In the first level analysis, there is only a respondent who is looking at the data. So you have only respondent level data available with you to analyze. But you still need to do the same thing. We recommend you freeze the pane, and you definitely add attach to filter, because filter really helps you to sort the data. Yeah. What is the section known as color? The color section is helpful if you are looking at data from, you have a set of keywords. The keywords are something which are very unique to your study, and you have recommended that keywords to, you have fed those keywords into the UnPickle tool. So all you need to do is go to a respondent level, select the word color, and all the keywords that you identified pop up, right? So you are now looking at not only the units which are in column, the analysis which are in rows, but even the third dimension, which are your specific project specific keywords, which you can figure out where they are. Yeah. So that is the third dimension that you can use while filtering or analyzing the data. The fourth way to look at the data is what we call it internally as collapsed. The difference between a first level and a collapsed is that, as you can see here, for introduction, I'm Andre, Chris, there are multiple respondents in multiple rows, multiple questions. All of them get collapsed at the rate of 100 words per cell. Why is this helpful? This is helpful because you can either read it directly in the reading pane of the Excel, or you can read it, if you are interested in the color coding, you can read it directly into the Excel file. This data is far less. So if you add around 264 rows of data here, you will see this is 50% of that. It comes to 130. So this is one way in which we have reduced the volume of data that is to be analyzed. So the words that we have color coded is from a predefined dictionary. So red is slightly negative, green is positive. For example, interesting, kind, best. Don't drive either. So this orange, red, green helps you to look at different confusing sentences in a much clearer fashion. We do have one more section which we called as summary. We do not recommend it at all for researchers who are looking at UnPickle output for the first time. There is a loss of information here in this worksheet only, where we have removed prepositions. And this is only if somebody has attended an interview or a group, knows what the questions are, is looking at only quick top line words or findings to help them to navigate through. So these are some other words. Summary is used for only those audience. Internally, UnPickle analyst uses this tool to also summarize the data and provide it to clients. Yeah. So these are some of the questions. If you have any questions, you are welcome to pop up in the chat box and Monish can take it up. I can stop the presentation and definitely answer any queries. So to recap, once we go through an output, we recommend that prerequisites needs to be followed like a practice. Static analysis is the analysis structure that you want to superimpose on the data. Data sorting is about looking at the first level analysis or the outputs that the tool is giving. And you are looking at either a moderator question or without a moderator question, or color coded by specific keywords, or you're looking at a sentiment version, or you're looking at a summarized version. So these are some of the options you can look at. You can also look at the data by filtering at a column A, column B basis to decide what level of questions you want to look at. You want to look at a higher level or a lower level granularity. Yeah. So these are some of the ways in which you can look at data sorting outputs. What we recommended as a best practice is whenever you look at a worksheet, decide the worksheet that you're comfortable with. Most of the researchers who are using it for the first time prefer the first level analysis with moderator question. But researchers who are experienced with UnPickle outputs have migrated to what we call as the collapsed version or the sentiment version. Yeah. So these are some of the best practices we encourage while you are looking at UnPickle outputs. When should you use the color coding version? Especially when you have sensorial studies where you have, especially in the pharma, when you have journey studies where you're talking about going from pre-planning stage to planning stage to decision making, or it's about sensorial studies where it's about packaging, color, ingredient, smell, and respondents are really not answering in the buckets in which the way the question was posed, right? For example, here, the first line, the question is about bottle, but the respondent is also talking about color. When you ask him a question about color, um, the respondent may answer in color as well as fragrance. When you're talking about ingredients, the respondent is now referring it to the bottle, right? So we don't encourage cut paste data into different buckets because you lose the context. But the color coding helps you to look at the data in the context that you're interested in. So that's when I would recommend to you to look at color coding. Okay. The fourth option is multilingual. We work with overseas clients, and we do have come up with where transcripts could be in French, could be in Bengali, could be in Bahasa Indonesia, Bahasa Malaysia. So we have seen such transcripts in the original language or the native language. UnPickle has also worked on such transcripts where we have done data sorting for such work. The only point is we are not able to do sentiment color coding yet because we are not, the sentiment for each country language is slightly different. So it's going to take some time, but we are still able to provide the same level of outputs when it comes to the others. Yeah. The other area where research UnPickle helps is in introducing context. Right? Sometimes you're doing a grouping exercise. Sometimes you're asking questions by brand, and you do not know which is the brand in question. Sometimes it's a WhatsApp focus group interview you have done, or interview you have done, and you need to integrate and incorporate the media files shown as part of that session, or the groups were part of a panel where studies were conducted. So such diverse technology level focus groups and interviews, product placement studies, diaries, also we have done using this structure where we're trying to incorporate the context and the diversity of the work that it entails. Yeah. Cohort level analysis is very interesting. I think this is where the value is. You have done your recruitment by groups, be it center, be it gender, be it socioeconomic classification, be it frequency or life stage. And you want to know what are the differences, what are the similarities, what are the differences in the data that you're asking. So in food association, how does a Bangalore person differ from Kolkata, differ from Pune, differ from Coimbatore? And that's a very different ask, right? Because you have close to 20 such cohorts. Now, what we do provide is we do provide what we call as you know master file or a linking file. What this helps you to do is it helps you to look at those different cohorts that you are interested in. So, for example, you're interested in Bangalore, you can just click on the Bangalore. You can look at the Bangalore data, come back. You may look at SEC A1, click on it, read the analyze the data. The way, so the data sorting output is the same. It's just that the data sorting now has been classified basis your cohorts, right, of the questions. So you're looking at user, who is a user, what are the questions they are asking of the data, so on and so forth. So this is something that we do provide. And they are again in one file only, so you don't have to open multiple files. You don't have to control F. So this is very, very useful to clients, especially where you have committed to providing cohort level similarities and differences. One area that we do help is summarization, which is just one level below report writing. How is that helpful? This is helpful because you do not have the time as a researcher to go through the outputs. You have to provide a top line findings by next day. you are really crunched for time, you're busy with other projects. So you just want to look at a high level summary. So you want somebody to summarize it for you to understand and do it. So for example, in one particular study, the client was interested in knowing what is the difference between brand A and brand B. Why is brand A preferred versus brand B? And why is brand B preferred versus brand A? So this is slightly what we don't call it, we call it summary analysis, where the researcher looks at auto summary and makes it amenable for reading for a researcher to quickly come to conclusions about what is the conclusion that you will have, why A is preferred versus B. Similarly, what is the difference depreciation? How is it calculated from a small broker versus a large broker versus OEM broker? What are the incentive given versus, for a small versus large versus OEM? So you can quickly come up to some conclusions very quickly without going through the large volume of data that you are usually stuck with. So we call this summary outputs, which is a combination of technology and human analyst, which ensures that it's summarized where there is no loss of information. At the same time, the reading time is reduced even further. Word clouds are very common. Researchers use word cloud very clearly. One of our clients, in fact, told us they actually used to manually count the keywords in focus groups before coming up to doing some word analysis. An InfoPickle tool is a 2-minute job. You can decide which analysis section you're looking at. You're looking at spawn, you're looking at likes, you're looking at dislikes, you're looking at which units, which conversation, and that's the conversation you need a word cloud on. We can provide you with that specificity and that detail. Two, we also provide something known as association map. So it's not only important to know what the word cloud is, but how does the word cloud differ by different cohorts, right? What are the different brand associations? What are the different segment level differences or unit level differences for the spawned association? So we are able to pictorially use it. So the right hand side is a correspondence map. It's a statistical technique. What we have done is we have overlaid the statistical technique on top of focus group interview word transcripts. So it makes it much more relevant. It makes it much more contextually useful for when a researcher is specifying what the word cloud is or what the association maps are. Yeah. We do something called as content analysis or thematic coding. Now, what is thematic coding? Thematic coding is something where the tool is not looking at static analysis. The tool is looking at saying what are the themes that have come up with, especially in exploratory studies, in journey studies, in broad perception studies. The client is looking for themes. Right? The client is looking for new ideas, and you want those ideas to be culled out. So what the tool does is the tool culls out 80 to 200 ideas in close to 1 to 2 minutes. And that's the job of the tool. But B is where a researcher or UnPickle analyst plays a role. B looks at context of the study, context of the client, of the category, and tries to make it more relevant. Tries to say which of those 80, 200 themes are relevant to the study at hand, which are big, which are small, but highly insightful. So in qualitative research, it's not the size which matters, right? Which much more the interestingness, quote unquote, which matters, which only a human can, a researcher can subjectively say this insight is useful. So everybody is saying it is perfect, no issues, it's not a problem. Easy to use, navigate is also looks, interesting. But where is the tool not effective? Okay, why is it slow? In what conditions, under what context is the tablet, iPad, mobile banking slow? Is it when they are traveling? Is it when the internet connection is weak? Is it when day part analysis, when they're working in the night, when the tool goes out, becomes very slow? So that becomes interesting. And what the tool can do is it can actually pick out those relevant sentences. And you can look at those relevant sentences to validate your themes. And this becomes very interesting because you have done in a day, reduced 800 to 200 themes. Use your human judgment to decide which are the relevant, useful, contextually themes that might be of interestingness to the client. And you have not only done that, you also validated with representative sentences so that you can demonstrate the validity of your answers, and then share it with the client saying these are the 3-5 big ideas that are emerging from the study. So we call this thematic coding. Some researchers call it qualitative coding. Some researchers call this as content analysis. So it depends, I think, irrespective of the terminology. This is something that is an alternative to data sorting, which is if you don't believe that data sorting might really structure the data well, but you're looking at a different, completely consumer language created themes, right? Instead of you superimposing a theme, you want to look at how consumers are talking about those themes. So this is relevant for those contexts. And this is one of the interesting work we have done for few clients. This is can be done if the client is interested in what we call as strategic brand management, where the client is looking at how conversation changes over different age brands, different profiles, different SECs, different source brands. What are the considerations set? What are the attributes associated with each brands? Why? Yeah. So this is something that we can do. So this is we call meta-analysis. The reason we call it meta-analysis is it does not look into the nuance of the project objectives. It looked at a mega project objective. It looks at multiple projects done over a historical period of time and really analyzing it to say what are the interesting questions that you can come up with, right? So for example, if you are working with an OTT provider and you're asking a question, why certain attributes were must have, why certain attributes were nice to have, and still why did not translate into purchase for that particular respondent, right? So when you're asking for those conversations, those questions, this is where the data helps you to do it. Yeah. What are the best practices? Okay. We have articulated the best practices in the chat. Monish has posted it. There are links to certain articles and video that we have kept. We articulated the best practices to do it. But if the researcher is interested in very quick turnaround time, interested in good quality of insights, then it's very important that we get all the information, right? We get information about the discussion guide, respondent details. Our rotation order should definitely be captured, not what was written in the discussion guide, but which was actually administered. In many cases, we have seen that the moderator follows their own rotation order independent of the discussion guide, right? And you want to ensure very high accuracy of the data. Segment classification is very important. If you are doing user, non-user, category differences, so you need to tag your each unit study with those details, so that when you're doing cohort analysis, segment level analysis, the tool can automatically pick it up and analyze it. Yeah. So while working with some of the projects, when you define the analysis header, we also recommend them to create what we call as mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive set of categories or analysis categories. For example, delayed response versus early response, right? So if there's such finer nuances, the tool can make a mistake. So we need to call out what is the difference between two very, very similar analysis, right? So we should at least brief the UnPickle team to say, for example, this break is about replacing, this is about interchangeable, and they are different. Okay. This color is about what was noticed in the pack, but this color is about what you noticed in the product, right? So those finer nuances is something that the tool can make a mistake, the team can make a mistake. So only the researcher is very, very close to the project, understands such fine level of nuances. So some briefing, especially on those subtle nuances, will definitely be of help. If you have not worked with UnPickle, you are working for the first time, we recommend you do a business case. Some of the researchers don't do transcripts, as we said, and some of them do content moderation. They're listening to audio and doing it, or they're using moderator notes. We are working on the moderator note piece. We do some form of analysis with moderator notes, but the quality of insights that actual word transcript can give versus moderator notes versus content moderation is a business case that you need to drive, where you're looking at cost versus the quality of insight. True accuracy, data loss is very important. Consistent results are very important because the studies have been conducted maybe by different moderators, different countries, geographies, different profiles. So you need to get that consistent results out. So third, I think last point we spoke about turnaround time to improve researcher productivity. In our experience, if it's a 20 to 30 transcript project, a researcher typically says 1 to 1.5 days. Elimination of manual analysis time, elimination of need to brief the analyst team or the data team. There is no need to learn about the tool. Learning is also productivity is also in terms of quickly, like we said, you're going to the ability to go through the pivot, look at the differences. So it is minimum 1.5 days to, if not more, okay, in our experience. And I think where we are going with this tool is we will be making this eventually self-service. We will be providing the access of this tool to some of our researchers, especially who are working with multilingual data, and only they know the data very well. So for example, we realize in Burma, in Morocco, the Google Translate is not so good, right? So you can only have the regional researchers who can do a best job with the tool. So we plan to provide access to the tool to such researchers who are willing to learn the tool. Proof of concept is very important. What is your current practice? You should do a proof of concept with us. Third is habit change. In our experience, every time UnPickle, every time a qualitative researcher works with our output, we do request them to do one call with us to handle them, just to how to navigate through those huge volumes of information that are there. We're looking for enhancements. I think we're running out of time, but we're looking at enhancements to the tool. So looking forward to any feedback you may have now or later to the tool. We're looking at enriching this tool with, how can we integrate with social media data, historical data? How can we do that? We are exploring this with a few clients. So you're welcome to write to us at milind.kelkar@unpickle.in. This is my email ID. I personally look into enhancements to the tool. This tool has evolved because it was made by qualitative researchers for qualitative researchers for a period of time. So these are the links to the articles and the video. Any questions anyone has, happy to answer them. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. A couple of questions. How does it stack up against other tool providers such as NVIDIA and MaxQDA?
I think I've worked on those tools. They are very great tools. I think this particular version of UnPickle is very, very customized to doing data sorting, which I suspect most of the tool providers are not doing it. Two, I think we do both, right? We provide access to the tool, but we also provide a service, which means I think the biggest hassle a qualitative researcher has is they have to work on a proposal, they have to attend groups, they have to work with multiple vendors, they have to submit the findings, conclusions, they have to write reports. There is no time to learn the tool. So we do provide a service which helps to eliminate that task. Okay. So that thing, service is one difference. Two is data sorting. I suspect they are not providing, but I may be wrong. But I don't think the data sorting option is not provided. In fact, when the word cloud is something that we do, very, very specific to the tool. So I'm not sure if the context and the relevance that we bring into some of the maps and outputs we do, I don't think it is done.
Okay. The next question is, what are the savings generated with UnPickle?
Yeah, I think I touched upon it. I think one is the researcher can work on what it's the core, right, which is focusing on generating insights. And this is one task less for them. So saving is not only a monetary saving, but it's also time saving, which is huge for the qualitative researcher. So I recommend them only from from a sheer productivity perspective. I would say around 30 to 40% of the researcher time is saved, which can be translated into monetary terms. Two, this is an extremely low cost option, right? Because you don't have to buy the tool, you have to pay only for the project. So you can budget it for the project and be done with. So very transactional level pricing. So so saving is also in terms of there is no capital expenditure that the client and researchers have to do in terms of buying a software or learning the tool or figuring out where to install the software. There is no need, no such thing. It just works very seamlessly with most of our 30 plus clients that we're working with. I hope that I answered the question.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is, can I get access to the platform?
Very good question. You should look out for it. We are open to giving access to the platform if you're interested in getting to know about it. Please write to us. We'll definitely be happy to give you access to the platform if you want to try. But I think there will be a training phase for which you'll have to learn about the tool.
Okay, so one more question. Do you also do audio to transcript?
Unfortunately, no. I did dabble with audio to transcript early on, but audio has a lot of challenges, multilingual, a lot of noise. Noise can be taken care of, but accent, acronyms, it's a huge issue, especially it is offline. Some of the voices are not audible. Who is speaking is not clear. Is it a moderator or respondent? There are multiple moderators, multiple respondents. Very difficult to know who is talking what. So right now we are not working on it. And I did experiment with a few tools which work. Their accuracy level is very low, we come to 60-70%. We tested it ourselves. So I would not recommend somebody to use an automated tool for that.
Yeah. So I think that was the last question. Okay.
Any other questions anyone has? Okay.
I think that, yeah. Okay. So I would like to thank you all for your participation and your time. We hope you got what you expected. If not, you can always send us an email at connect@unpickle.in. We would love to solve your queries there. You can view the white paper and the short video on how to interpret the output by clicking on the links in the chat box. If you have any feedback, positive or negative, feel free to shoot us an email to the email ID mentioned. You can also follow our page on LinkedIn for more relevant information. With that, we come to the end of this insightful webinar. We hope to see you guys soon at our next event. Thank you.